The cold of the western morning seeped into my skin as I stepped down from the wagon, surveying a small town nestled in the heart of the wilderness. The old wooden houses stood still beneath a gray sky, the cold wind sweeping through the open fields, carrying the scent of earth and burning wood. Everything was quiet, save for the howl of the wind through the tall pines. Horses were tethered by the roadside, waiting for their masters to continue their journey, but I had one sole purpose: to find the woman who was being sold like property. I wasn't one to partake in auctions of this nature, but I couldn't sit idly by while she was auctioned off. I didn't know who she was, but in the midst of that filthy crowd, she was the only one with eyes that didn't deceive, eyes that gleamed with resilience. Despite being cloaked in apparent weakness, Maggie Wild. The name echoed in my head every time I tried to shake it. She stood there, bound in a tattered burlap sack, her face hidden, only her eyes visible, and those eyes spoke volumes. No fear, no pleading. Only resolve, as though she had already braced herself for whatever trial lay ahead. But the trial she faced wasn't anything other than this auction. She was being sold, not as a person, but as an object. And that I couldn't accept. "She's not a commodity to be traded," I whispered, my voice barely audible to myself. But then, before I could think, I found myself stepping forward, unhesitating. The crowd fell silent as I stood firmly on the auction block. Strange eyes locked onto me, but I didn't care. The price didn't matter. I wasn't buying her to own her. I was buying her so she could be free, so she would no longer be a victim of this cruel world. $2, I declared. The room fell so quiet that I could hear the wind outside. The crowd murmured, but I didn't listen. My gaze never left her eyes, and those eyes met mine, as if searching for something she hadn't found yet. She didn't speak, didn't resist. She silently followed me step by step, as if she were exhausted from searching for a place to belong. I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew that I couldn't leave her here, where all she had was coldness and shame. We stepped out of the town, moving along the dusty, worn road. The air was damp, the smoke from distant cooking fires drifting lazily through the air. I led her to my cabin, a simple, quiet place, much like my life. It was the only place I felt peace, where the chaos of the outside world didn't reach me. It was a place I thought she would feel safe, but I knew I was wrong. As we entered the cabin, a gust of cold wind blew in, making the door creak. I hurriedly closed it, trying to ease the tension between us. Maggie stood still, her eyes scanning the room but not speaking a word. She didn't look relieved or grateful. I didn't know what to do to make her feel safe. She was just a young woman caught in a world full of sin and suffering, and I was a man trying to help her. Yet I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to do so. "You can sit down if you want," I said, my voice thick in my throat. I didn't know what I was saying. She silently sat down, her eyes never leaving mine. I knew she was looking for something in me, a truth, a promise, maybe just a reason to trust. I quietly prepared food, setting a bowl of soup in front of her. When I turned around, I saw that she was still sitting there, silent, as though everything had already become a thing of the past for her. Nothing left to hope for, only exhaustion and despair in those eyes. "Eat," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. "You don't have to worry about anything. This is a safe place." She didn't respond right away, just stared at the bowl, then looked back up at me. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling, but there was a hidden strength in it. "You don't know who I am. You don't know what I've done." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. Who was she? A woman on the run? A woman sold to survive? A criminal? A victim? Or someone else I didn't know? The question twisted in my mind, and I realized I'd never truly thought about it before. I didn't know who she was. I only knew that I couldn't let her fall into the hands of those vile men. I swallowed hard, leaning against the wooden wall. "I don't need to know your past. I only know that you're someone who needs help. And I will help you," I said, my voice firm. Though inside I wasn't sure. She didn't say anything more, just silently ate. But every movement of hers made me feel like I was slowly beginning to understand her more. No matter what, I knew she wasn't a bad person. She had been through too much just to survive, and now I would be the one to protect her. We sat in silence by the fire that night, each lost in our own thoughts. I didn't speak anymore, letting the stillness envelop us. She was no longer a stranger. She was someone I wanted to protect, and in some way I felt this strange connection building between us. A connection I couldn't explain, but I couldn't ignore. That feeling had grown so strong inside me that I couldn't turn back. Maggie wasn't with me out of sympathy. It was because we shared a bond that I couldn't fully comprehend, but I would keep my promise to her. I would protect her, and I didn't know if I could keep that promise, but I would fight to never leave her alone. That night, as I closed the door to the cabin behind me, I realized that we couldn't stay here for long. The past was still lingering in the air, and this small town was too small to hide someone like Maggie. The whispers from the crowd, the suspicious glances, would never stop haunting her, and I knew that, whether I liked it or not, we would have to leave. Maggie sat by the fire, her eyes still full of concern, as though she hadn't slept a wink. I turned to look at her, unsure of what to say. She looked at me and spoke softly, her voice tinged with a sadness that seemed to weigh on her soul. "Where will we go?" Maggie asked, her eyes staring into a future that seemed as uncertain as mine. "We'll go somewhere new," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Somewhere where the past can't catch us." She didn't answer, just lowered her head, her fingers absent-mindedly twisting the old ring on her hand. I knew what she was thinking. Her past wouldn't let go easily. She'd lost everything, not just to those hunting her, but to the very pain from deep within her heart. But I believed she could find freedom. She could live a different life. If only we left here, escaped the shadows of the past. We decided to leave the next morning. The morning sky was bright, but there was still an air of foreboding. A new day was beginning, but for Maggie, it was a new beginning filled with doubt. She didn't believe in the future, didn't trust the promises I'd made. And I understood, because I too couldn't protect her forever. But I still hoped that we would find a place to start anew. We rode together through the vast prairie. The land stretched out endlessly, but inside me, there was only an endless emptiness. We didn't speak much, just moved through the grasslands, the wind brushing against our faces as if time was standing still. But in the stillness of that moment, I felt the tension building. Maggie tightened her grip on the reins, her gaze suddenly distant, as though something was troubling her. "Ethan," she said quietly, her eyes flashing with a fear I hadn't seen before. "Are you sure we're doing the right thing?" I looked back at her, my eyes meeting the uncertainty in hers. "I don't know what's right or wrong, Maggie, but I know we can't go back. We can't stay here. We can't let the past control us." She fell silent for a moment, then nodded. I could feel the weight in that gesture. She wasn't one to trust easily, but I didn't know how to make her feel safe. Our future ahead wasn't going to be easy. We'd have to fight not just with enemies, but with the doubts and fears inside us. What I didn't know was that just hours later, everything would change forever as we passed over the lush hills and began to move into the wilder, more desolate areas. I noticed a shadow lurking behind us. The presence was impossible to ignore. At first, I thought I had imagined it, but the feeling of unease grew. "Maggie," I called, my voice tinged with tension. "Do you see anything?" She looked up, her gaze flashing with fear. "Someone's following us, isn't there?" I nodded, my hand gripping the reins tightly. "Definitely. We can't keep going like this." Our pace quickened, but the steps behind us kept up. There was no place to hide. A gunshot rang through the air, followed by the sound of a horse neighing in the dark. Maggie fell from her horse and I rushed to her, pulling her close. "Run," I yelled. "Run fast." We raced across the prairie, sweat beading on our faces, our breath ragged in the wind. The figures behind us closed in, and I knew we couldn't let Maggie fall into their hands. I pushed her into a nearby cave, but the group pursuing us didn't stop. It was then I realized. All the decisions I had made so far weren't enough. I couldn't protect her forever, but I wasn't giving up. I would fight not for myself, but for her. For the love I knew would never fade. The scene in the cave, filled with anxiety and tension, further emphasized the perilous situation they faced. I looked at Maggie, seeing the despair in her eyes, but also a flicker of hope. She wasn't giving up, and neither was I. This moment made me reflect on everything I had done to get her here. But I couldn't turn back. And no matter how bad things got, I would always fight for her. For our love and our lives, we kept running, not knowing where the future would lead us, but I knew that with every step. We were rebuilding our lives from the ashes of the past. And in this love, I would never leave her alone.